I'm Gopi Kokkonda. As a CEO of the Tech Solutions Forum, I speak with tens of engineering leaders every day, trying to understand the challenges that they are going to, and also what solutions have been working for them. Also, as a general partner of a venture capitalist firm, I get to talk to so many founders and CEOs. Maybe they are bootstrapping or they are Series B and Series C. Their perspective is completely different than an engineering manager side. Having said that, my intention is to share a few trends with you, even though they don't look important, but how critical they are, time critical, for you as engineering leaders to pay attention and then treat them as a priority and take some action so that you all are more successful in your careers. And this is how exactly are we going to do it. We're going to talk about the HR trends and then how they have an effect on your engineering leadership, and then how to create some strategic goals and then things to avoid. And we'll quickly touch upon two new emerging technologies or disruptions or threats in the name of AI and security. And lastly, we'll sum it up by talking about the role, mindset, and the critical skills that are required for any team to flourish, and the role that you have to play, and why you have to play that thing to be a better manager. All right, so the important thing is first to understand, as you grow in your role, it is imperative that you may become more lonely and then have fewer people to guide you, to lean upon, to seek advice, to mentor, so that you have enough tools and skills to navigate the changing world of people and the future of work. Now, we have gone through multiple shifts in the recent times. We've gone through COVID, and then the remote, and then the hybrid, and then after that there is a quiet quitting, the great resignation, and then there are so many layoffs right now. So you are going through multiple shifts. And then there was a time we were talking about future of work. Having said that, it has become the now of work. It's important to recognize it's no longer future. You are in the present, and then if at all you're still thinking that I will wait and then watch, things like that, you're already falling behind many other companies who are taking that action. And we'll talk about what and why it is important. Okay, so the first thing we're going to understand is about the changing trends at workplace. Now, there could be a lot of examples about companies doing many things. We will now talk about, because of what companies are doing, what has they set into the employee's mind as to what the base level expectation is. So among multiple companies, Delta Airlines is one such company who has gone to great lengths for all of their 21,000 workforce. They have created a new department called Happiness Department, and then they have hired a CXO who is called as Chief Happiness Officer. And among multiple initiatives, they do at least 12 sessions for the whole family with relate to the wellness and then handling their mental problems and things like that. Second thing is, in addition to that, to have a better footprint, they help employees make better and cost-effective food choices. And there's a big list. The point for us to understand here is, with companies going to great lengths doing that, now employees all over the world are now treating not a company as not just a workplace, but as a wellness engine. Wellness engine is what the new age employees' expectation is. And then for your team, whether you are an existing team or the future team that you are hiring, it's important to make them feel that your company, among many things, is also a wellness engine. You're not just taking care of their financial salary and whatnot, but you are there to address their extensive needs as a family, as wellness. So that's the important thing to know. In addition to that, there is something called, and I'm going to walk through this slide and come back. You see here the trends of pre-pandemic and then the current situation of Feb. This is what the current situation is. and this is what the employers are expecting, and this is what the employees are expecting in terms of the workplace. So it's about the remote, on-site, and hybrid. So if you see these trends here, there has been a shift in terms of what you have seen at your workplaces. But the important thing to understand is what is the gap between the actual and expectation. So if you see currently the hybrid model is more or less consistent in terms of the actual versus expected from the employer location. Okay, the complete remote has gone down and the hybrid thing has changed. Now here is the important thing for you to observe. The employees' preferred location, there's still a big gap between the on-site, 21% to 7%, and there's also a difference between the hybrid aspect. The thing that closely matches is what we call as, the remote aspect. The hybrid aspect is which matches closely. So what are the trends telling us? It's not that employees just want to work from home, and there is already a tussle which you're seeing between employers and employees. The key thing to understand is employees are looking for flexibility. Flexibility is a term that you want to make your current and future team feel. Now, there are quite a few companies doing quite a few things. Like Chick-fil-A is one company where now they are letting their people work for 13 to 14 hours a day for just 3.5 days and then just take the remaining days off. So what I'm trying to say, you as an employer or as an engineering manager, with getting the right buy-in from your management, make or empower your teams to feel that, hey, they are getting flexibility, okay? And as long as they're feeling that they are being offered flexibility, well, you will be able to increase their productivity and happiness as such. Okay, last but not the least, you all know the diversity, equity, inclusion, and ESG aspect of it. Well, it looks like a more general term and sometimes an overloaded term, but that is real. That is real beyond just the compliance side of it, especially the Gen Z or all the younger employees who you may be hiring, or they are taking that as one of the very important decision factors in whether they want to work for an existing company or start looking, or in their decision-making factor of who to join. So records say that in spite of two companies having the same offer, or even one company having a lesser salary, anybody who has been able to better portray the history of DEI and ESG, employees are choosing that company. The reason is, especially the younger employees, the Gen Z, would want to have the term attach the word meaning to their work. So they want to see the employers do some meaningful work and then take this as a thing. Okay, so now we'll just move further along how the compensation trends will change. Now, let not hold me on to the recent layoffs and whatnot, but just before that, what has been happening in trends is employers are becoming creative and employees are also okay with that. And that is compensation based on non-monetary aspects, which includes deferred compensation, one, where you just hire somebody and then based on how you want to offer, you can pay a component of it in not just 1 year, but over a period of like 1 to 2.5 years. That's one thing. Second thing is performance-based compensation. Okay, so you could include a performance aspect of it and then see how you could still hold on to your A players. Okay, so that's one important thing to notice. And last but not the least is about quiet hiring, where employers are reskilling and upskilling their existing people. The last in here is the skill gap, especially the Gen Z, who have been very unlucky because they have lost 2 years, where they have not just lost the idea of job skills, but also mainly the social intelligence or communication skills. So this being the summary of all the workplace trends, we will now talk about how they affect your leadership and your teams and what you need to do about it. Okay? So let's take a step back and revisit your focus areas. Okay, so the focus areas could be, hey, here are your top few objectives in your company, and then we'll try to understand, because of the recent changes, how those focus areas are transitioning from a focus area to a concern area to a challenge for your role. Okay, so let's talk about, sir, in your role this year, what are your top objectives for you or your focus areas? And these are the top two things in my mind for this year. Anything you want to share?
We're undergoing a lot of change right now.
Okay.
And I think mine is the stability of the change, as well as then keeping the business moving and successful.
I see. Okay.
So
stability and making the business successful.
Exactly. And just including those new innovations that we're bringing in.
All right. Okay. So anything you want to add? What your focus areas?
Yeah, for me, it's both innovation
Okay.
and tech stack upgrade.
Okay.
So just keeping up. Things are changing really fast.
All right. Anything for you, sir?
Yeah, so we're my biggest thing is tech transformation, migrating from our on-prem to the cloud.
All right.
And then maintaining stability for that also.
Okay. Stability, transformation, new technology. So that's what we see here. So as an engineering leader, your top focus areas are digital transformation and then changing things from legacy to cloud and data and analytics, and how you could impact your bottom line to let managers make the right decisions, building dashboards and things like that. Now, and also, hey, because you're a big company, you have a lot of budget, you're also think further along the lines of, hey, customer centricity, sustainability, having a carbon footprint and things like that. Now, that being said, that being the focus area, what becomes a concern area is, as an engineering leader, technology changing not just every year or every quarter, now it's changing every week, right? Everybody used ChatGPT in the recent times, right? How things are changing all of a sudden. Now, you would understand that as an engineering leader, it now moves from the focus area to a concern area. Okay, hey, am I able to keep up with the emerging technologies? Hey, what is the one new thing? Am I falling behind? Or should I try this project, right? Or whether having AI as a part of the thing, will it be for good or bad? Do I have a budget? At the end of the day, how am I going to show the value, ROI, and I'm getting promoted, or will I have my job, or things like that? So there's so many things like that, right? So that brings from the focus to concern. Now here becomes a challenge area. Now, I know some of you may be individual contributors, some may be tech lead, some may be VP of engineering. Now you are not just accountable for what you do, but also down your chain, the 10 or 50 people that report to you, and they may be living at 6 different locations. And then in the recent times, you've seen various examples of the gig economy, people not showing loyalty, they're doing 3 jobs in parallel, and then you never know when they show up or not. So as an engineering leader, you know that becomes your challenge area in red. Hey, from the focus area to concern area to talent management, and then the often ignored term is you as an engineering leader is going through a lot of stress, and then you need to acknowledge and then navigate through that, right? So that is what we are trying to understand, how the changes in workplace and how it's affecting your area to the stress. Now, to tie into to the HR aspects of it. Now, you may be thinking that, hey, all the changes in the trends and whatnot, my company's HR is going to take care of it. Either I'm not qualified, or I don't have the bandwidth, or I'm not equipped enough. But believe it or not, in the last 2.5 years, HR departments are the most overwhelmed and overworked people. And then you as engineering leaders are closer to your teams versus they are having to make second-hand decisions by just doing surveys and whatnot. So what am I trying to say here is, you as an engineering leader, number one, have to acknowledge that whatever your HR departments are doing is not enough. And then you are having to contribute by acknowledging that they are doing more, and then you have to just give them or cut them some slack for them. And lastly, it's important that you have to also collaborate with them and partner with them, and by educating, uprising, influence them of all the trends that are going through, so that at the end of the day, you got to save your department, right? Because you have to show the ROI to the manager who you support, and that is how you will be acting upon by knowing these trends. Now, you may also say, Gopi, all these things are already what we know, so what's new about it? So it's like this. We all know exercise is good, right? How many days we do exercise? It depends upon only when we come to our door front, right? So only when doctor says, hey, your cholesterol levels are high, no, you got to do 30 minutes cardio every day, right? We all know, and only when somebody says it, nudges us, and then makes it a priority and urgency we act upon. So what am I trying to sum it up? You as engineering leaders are not just have a priority, but also a time-sensitive factor in taking a role in these aspects so that you are helping your team and your company. All right, so we'll just take a step back and then we'll visit a few things. And as a part of that, we'll try to understand if we are creating strategic goals, and then how to create strategic goals to address few challenges, and also what to avoid with them. So I talked to several engineering managers, some at a bootstrapped startups, and then some all the way to like enterprise level. They have different answers. If I say, hey, as an engineering manager, what kind of goals are you creating for the team? One manager just says, Gopi, well, we are always under the gun to deliver code, so all we get is a deliverable and the timeline, and then we just deliver code. What else do you need from me? Well, on the other side, fortunately, depending upon a culture and a budget, and the team size and whatnot, another company, and this is shared the name, is Masterclass. Masterclass, the company, I learned from them that they create 3-year strategic goals with a 1-year roadmap, and for their engineering team. Okay, so if you talk about engineering team, depending upon again your role size, you may say, hey, we may just at most create about our deliverables. If we meet our deliverables, or what is the response time, or throughput, or secure, that could be what you come into mind. But the point for us to note is, as an engineering leader, it is important to think about and create your department strategy goals in these 3 areas: customer facing, product facing, and then team facing. On the customer facing, it could be any of all those things, like the response time and the customer rating. And then on the product side, it could be security and throughput and things like that. But more so on the team side, things could be related to, hey, what percentage of the team have I been able to retain, or how should I retain? And then what should be the number of proof of concept projects I should try, and what are the new trainings that I should impart to my team to help them feel thrive. Okay, so that's one. The second thing is, well, there could be, I'll quickly skim through this, but I'll ask you mainly, what situations, or what your personal situations at your company, what has been possibility, right? So they are like cascading goals, and then it cascades down to, hey, we start with one big goal that, hey, we want 50% growth, or 6 million revenue, or 1,000 sales, or depending upon whatever your company size is, and then how the goals cascade into what are all the related aspects of it in terms of the number of shopping carts purchased, or number of people logging on the website, number of new registrations, as such. But the important thing for us to understand, as you have to create the 3 kinds of goals here, point 1. But point 2 is, you may say, Gopi, you know what, we have gone through a big layoff. And then now all the things that we set earlier is, how do you think it's possible? Or we had a big recruiting shift where we had like 6 new people, and then we had this 3-year vision, and then we don't have the bandwidth to train them or making them buy into the process. Well, the point for us to understand is, these goals, even though they help us as operational guidance, it should not be treated as etching in stone, so that it becomes like too much pressure for us. So the goals should be there, but they should be adaptable, and you should have, depending upon your team size and changing scenarios, revisit them and update them as they suit you. Now, as we do that, let's also understand what things are good to avoid. Now, it comes to us like, hey, I've done this mistake myself, and I was a technologist. Hey, we have to improve the bug ratio. We should have less number of bugs, or we should have less number of critical bugs, or we should have improve our code quality, right? So 3 months later, whatever I said, and then I had the meeting with my reportee, and they said, okay, there was no way for us to determine how the code quality improved or anything like that. So I'm trying to make a point that it's important that you make the goals SMART goals. I guess everybody knows what it is, as much as possible. So it could not be all the 5 things within the SMART acronym. It could be like 2 or 3 or 4 out of them. Okay. And one thing as engineers, we also maybe getting sucked into what we call as over relying on one metric. So it could be like, hey, in this quarter, whether it's any of these parameters, if at all you only rely on one parameter, well, it could haunt you. And then if at all, the moment that your team gets into a feeling of, hey, this is not going to be achievable, then you are what? You're walking into doing a march of death, right? So we don't want to do that. So what we want to do is, well, we want to ensure that your team feels that anything that we set as goals is not about a punitive action if they don't reach it, but more so for course correction and continuous learning. Okay, so to kind of give it a complete shape, it is important to make each team member, from the higher up to even the intern if possible, that they are a piece of the puzzle, and then they are so important that if they have their piece put, then only the puzzle is complete. So it's not easy, but it's important that you have to help your team members feel that they are a part of the puzzle, and then all of you are trying to work towards one common vision. So, for example, one of the vision that we set for our company was, hey, at the end of the year, we want to have, let's say, X number of happy customers or Y number of happy employees. Now we want to redefine or define each of those things. What does happy mean, right? And what does X number of customers mean? And then we define each person's role and contribution, how important it is. Okay, so think of few examples, and we'll talk about that. What 1 or 2 things you may want to suggest to your team. The last point here is, to sum it up, creating a culture. And then I've seen a company called Coursera. They have this culture where they invest X percentage of time, and then quite a few companies do it, anywhere from 10 to 25%, time on giving the engineers a freedom to work on their own pet projects, experimenting with new technologies. And at the end of every quarter, they not just acknowledge, they celebrate all the work they did. Excuse me, go ahead.
Could you repeat the percentage, please?
10 to 25.
10 to 25.
Yes. So, and then you could do it 5, you could do it 3, but the whole thing is getting into that culture, fostering the culture of innovation is so very important, and ensuring that you celebrate and then acknowledge all the work, that is so very important. So, let us take a step back and try to understand. Let's say I'm the CTO, right? And then I come to you as a engineering lead, and then ask you, hey, Mr. or Miss Engineering Manager, we had a good last year. And then as you see, there are so many shifts in the market. Based on what you're seeing in the market, and I have to share that we have a 20% budget cut in our this 2023. So what adjustments do you suggest we make to our engineering department to make it still thriving and people are still engaged in 2023? So if at all, I as a CTO and come to you and ask that, for your suggestions. Let's give it a shot. As what would your answer be? Anybody just put some thought to it? Please.
So one, and we actually have this issue now, we're tackling this year. Look at our infrastructure costs. What can we optimize? What are like idle resources that we have? What can we right size? What can we re-architect so it's more cost effective? Things like
Okay.
that.
All right. So what can we re-architect so it's more cost effective? Okay, that's very nice. Anybody else about team engagement and then strategic goals? Or let me ask about strategic goals. Sir, can you just share what kind of strategy goals do you have for your engineering department?
We want to automate the business processes. We have engineering side, one of my leaders here.
Okay.
We have robotic process, business process automation. So
Okay.
it says it creates operational efficiency for the company. So
Okay.
that's one of the strategic.
I see. So that, let's say that falls under which of these buckets here? Okay, it could be like product or team.
It can be product and it can be customer too, because
Okay.
when you do fast response, customers will give
I see.
fast response with customer journey. I think we're trying to balance both customer journey and employee journey.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
it's together.
No, very nice. And how are you measuring? What metrics would you be using to measure your goals?
If it is product, obviously, like number of features we are delivering, like code qualities and all. If it is RPA, then obviously number of pods, how much efficiency we're bringing, operational efficiency for the business teams. Let's say today, for a business process, if you are executing 20 steps, with bots you can make it like 6 to 7 steps faster deliveries. So there are many metrics out there
Okay.
to assess that. So we need to watch the output over a period of time, not just like 1 month or something. As I said, watch the trends and then change the velocities.
Yes, yes. No, very nice. I appreciate it. And I just recollected one more thing that as an engineering manager, it's important to also possibly incorporate the idea of listing non-goals for your team, because it happens quite a few times that there is a gap between the business and the team, and they say, hey, we want to do this and we don't want to do this, and there's this is in scope, this is not in scope. So anytime when you find something which you are not doing as part of the project, it's important to list that as a non-goal and then get that as a sign-off or buy-in so that they know to set the right expectation that, hey, that will not be done in this release and it will have to be pushed or deferred or prioritized in a later release. So to sum it up, we're talking about creating strategy goals, not just for the department side, the customer, team, and the product side, and then having the right metrics, and then things to avoid, which include over-reliance on one metric, and then non-goals, and then general goals, and make sure you replace punitive action with more so as course correction and learning. We're going to talk 2 more things very quickly. Now, again, this is not a technical discussion or conversation. It's more about the mindset and what things are more important for you. I see at least today there are more technology conversations where you talk about security and AI, but in lieu of that, we're going to touch about the concept level and then have a quick dialogue on that. So, needless to say, the reason we're talking about this is in the recent times, these are the trends with respect to the cybercrime. It's going to be 10 trillion by 2025. More important is, see these numbers, on average, only 5% of companies' data is said to be like protected, and then less than 50% of people say that there are yet to be provided like adequate measures, training, process, and budget to give them the confidence that their company, their products, their systems are secure. This Gallup survey with had a lot more details. I could share that with you, and it's important that you take a look later. There could be again, several things that you do, but it's important for us to talk about. Number one, make as an engineering leader, even though, well, being a big company, you may have the whole CISO and the department and things like that, but depending upon your size and how small or bigger it is, you play a part and take interest in understanding the threat level for your company, number one, and the threat appetite for your company. In that way, you then follow down the chain as what to do. Now, whether you as a team or individual team member or playing a role at a authentication level, access level, or network level, or application level, or physical security level, it's very important for you to understand what is the threat level and the threat appetite for the company. Second thing is get a buy-in from all your team members as to what measures and protocols you want to follow. Third thing is incorporate that security into your system and then identify the right schedule to ship the code with most security. So that could be the order of steps. The point is, it always is not practical, right? Somebody has a resource challenge, somebody has a budget challenge, and somebody has a new threat, and then they do not have enough time to remediate, and they are not enough prepared for the incident response, right? So the whole of this thing could be summarized. Well, who has heard about solar winds, right? Right? So it has, on the bad side, obviously had such a huge impact on the whole thing in terms of the volume and the size and the monitoring, and more so the reputation of the company, and then more so it involved the government and private agencies. But on the good side, it has opened up new regulations, right? And then zero trust security, where you just never trust and verify each time. So in that way, we just treat that it has happened for the good. So what is important for us is to talk about the top 2 points, and more so the bottom things. You as a company, you may have your CISO department and whatnot doing all these things. But the important thing for you to understand is the concept of shift left. Simply is, well, earlier, all the security threats and the repercussions were due to security being treated as a separate wing, and it came much later in cycle. The only thing that you need to understand is right now, shifting left, where you incorporate security as a part of your framework as early in your cycle in the design and development phase, right? And there is some challenge to that, but it's more so, it's a culture that you as an engineering manager need to make sure that your team is fostering a culture of security from very early in the cycle. And how to do that? Well, there are things like threat modeling and various concepts. We're not going to take all the details as of such. The second important thing, what I've seen engineering managers not complain, but share their pain that even though there's a need to ensure that they have equipped their team with the security expertise, there has been a big gap between the dev team and the security team. And the one thing that you need to do as an engineering manager to fill that gap is to have what we call as a security champion in your team, who would be a liaison between your team and the embedded security expert in the company, so that having the cross-functional team meetings and then security measures, and you get to buy in and incorporate those measures. Now, all the other things, like you may be doing any and all these things, we'll try to skip based on the time we have. So let's take a quick step back. In the last 6 months, anybody want to share what is the challenge that they have as an engineering lead in adhering to the security protocols of their company, or any challenges that they're facing in general? Please.
Yeah, so once I took over the DevSecOps position, I mean, there was a huge tech debt and security that we didn't know the issues we had. So I set up many tools, analyzers, to look at all the issues. Now, there's hundreds of issues, some many are critical or highs. Basically, this is basically point 2. Getting the teams to actually prioritize taking care of those issues during their sprints has been a pain point.
I see.
Because we have these deliverables, we cannot delay them, blah blah blah. So security gets thrown to the side.
I see. So I guess we have like 5 more minutes. We'll quickly skim through the next slide, and after that, I feel it's good for us to do a small exercise. Ty, will you be able to just share those things which I
Yeah.
used at the beginning? So we talk about AI quickly. Again, it's a huge concept, and then you may probably already have witnessed the pros and cons. But I would rather can you just please share a few things along with the fence. What I would like to point out is more so taking a step back and then addressing the philosophical side of it. So AI at the end of the day is accumulation, analysis, and projection. Accumulation, analysis, and projection of information. And we understand that going further, whether we know it or not, that would become less and not relevant at all. So you may want to think that what in my job in the next 1 year or so will be anything related to accumulation, analysis, and projection, right? Accumulation, analysis, and projection of information, which will be replaced by AI. Why? Because AI is all about taking previous information, accumulating and projecting it in a way which is exponentially faster than us, and then it has a much lesser scope for human error. Okay? So that being said, with the risks of anything and everything, the philosophical way to think about that is what else we got to do as humans if all AI takes over, right? The important point to understand is if you realize, and I've been digging about the other sides of non-technical side of AI, and I've learned that, well, we have multiple dimensions of intelligence, right? Not just the logical or mathematical side of it, which AI does, or as of now it's equipped to do, but we have the audio, visual, kinesthetic, intra and interpersonal, verbal, and naturalistic dimensions of intelligence. So the moment we think that all through our life, knowingly or unknowingly, fortunately or unfortunately, we have been programmed to only learn, incorporate, and project only mostly the mathematical side or logical side of information. Now it's time for us to delegate all the menial, mundane tasks to a machine, and then now it's time for us to explore, hone, and then cherish the other sides of dimension, right? Only if you think like that, now you would realize there is much more scope in thriving in a happy life going further. Another school of thought is, at the end of the day, hey, I may lose my job, my kids have nothing to do, and then well, I right now fret that my kids don't know how to operate a TV without a remote, right? We all have kids, didn't have a remote and we know, and then it's such a coincident situation. I lost the remote for whatever reason, and then there was so many tantrums at home, not having to switch on the TV and whatnot. But after 1 week, my son was able to go onto the TV and do things what we're doing in our childhood, and then I felt so proud of myself for losing the remote, and he's now able to do all those things. Well, coming back to this thing, the point is, to summarize this is, as long as we think that there are multiple dimensions of intelligence, and then we can cherish and hone them, and then we can form a collaboration with AI, then there is much more to explore in life, and then use AI to only augment our speed, our ROI, and apply it to our company as well. Now, as in how this simple thing will make a huge difference. Will AI replace my job? No, but a person using AI will. So that's a small, subtle fact that we have to keep in mind, the difference between fearing and versus using it. To sum the whole thing up, we'll talk about the keyword adaptive leadership. So we want to understand, we talked about strategic goals and skilling workforce and things like that. The keyword that we need to understand is being adaptive to your leadership style. And second thing is, what are the soft skills which makes things more important? Now, I've talked to several engineering managers, and one manager recently told me, I asked him, hey, what questions do you ask when you interview new engineers these days? And he says, Gopi, whatever questions I ask or not, I'm going to make sure to ask 2 questions. And when they are new engineers, I'm not going to ask them any technical questions. I'm going to ask these 2 questions, which are, what is the last project that you did in your school? And after doing that, what did you learn about yourself? And second thing is, in whatever project you collaborated with people who are not in front of you, you did on like YouTube or TikTok or WhatsApp or Skype or anything, what are the challenges that you faced, and then what did you learn from it? So the important thing for us to understand is, in the coming few years, coding skills and whatnot become less relevant, and then social intelligence, being able to understand how the other person is thinking, what he's saying and whatnot, is much more important. And I'm going to show that along with critical thinking and problem solving, and achievement focus, and self-learning. Self-learning is such one more important thing I want to quickly show here. This is what, in a world we are going to be, this is what we need to acknowledge. And we're going through this quick slide. And I am such a culprit of this. I interact with teams every day in 3 different countries, and then 30% of the times I go wrong, and then this is what I tell myself. The same sentence, depending upon what word you stress, has a completely different meaning. And then the Skype, Slack, whatever channels we use to type messages, until the person understands what it is. And I've seen this happening with my team members, not just with my team members. I'm so bad at communicating with my wife of 20 years, and then she tells me, hey, bring no more than 4 tomatoes from the grocery store. And the day I bring whatever 5, and then for what's no, but I thought you said approximately 4 and no and whatnot. Hey, if you have more money, why don't you go by Twitter? She mocks me doing these things. Well, long story short, when you are talking with multiple people at multiple places, I would say this one thing. Communication is the key, and then it's never enough to over-communicate, right? So these days, I make it a point that I communicate, and I communicate again, I clarify, and I communicate one more time, even though I'm blamed that, hey, Gopi, you communicate overly sometimes. But it's much more important, depending upon being blamed, than the person getting it wrong. And as part of the communication is also feedback. So here's one very important slide about feedback. If your reportee is surprised about feedback at any point of time, then that means you have waited too long to give your feedback. So it's important to have regular feedback sessions, and whatever it is, but not wait for a quarter or a year, but it could be as soon as possible, depending upon what you think serve. So these are the cloud with all the things that you want to understand, what should resonate with you, so that will help you make the decisions going further. We'll take a quick moment to do this exercise. I hope you all have the sheet with you. So I would like for you to take an attempt on trying to understand your skill vectors. Okay, the first diagram is your understanding in your role for you to be successful, where you need to be in each of these skill vector. And then, for example, the HR trends, strategy goals, security AI, and then it could be a choice of your own. My skill vector may form like this. Okay, so you want to draw your own. And the second diagram is where you currently stand. The first diagram is what would be ideally required for your role to be successful. The second picture is where is your current situation. And once you do that, and you can do a part of it as a take home as well. After you do that, it's good to understand for your own development which vectors you need to focus in the coming days. And to sum it up, it's good for you to understand Well, you could do that not just for you, but your direct reports as well, and take that with you. And most important thing is, as a part of this session, what things are reiterated or more priority for you, and you are committing to at least 2 actions, which in the next 4 weeks, at least 2 actions in the next 4 weeks, which vectors you will work upon to make you more effective as an engineering leader. All right. So I wish we had more time for questions, but I talked to several engineering leaders, and then they talked to me about the more practical aspects of it. Hey, these days, Gopi, with teams being in 6 different countries, what interview questions not to ask, and then hey, what to include in a job description, how to vet partners and vendors, and this new concept of FTC ban or non-compete, and then startups ask me how that is going to affect of they hire employees and then they have a non-compete which no longer is implemented because of the recent change, and how this is going to affect the companies. And then most importantly, during the layoffs these days, how to communicate the bad news. Well, I have the special honor that I was laid off 2 times during the .com era in 2008 and 10. And then you may be wondering, hey, why am I in this room? I should have wanted a different room. But I have so much experience going through the pain that, and I've seen how much ever these big companies, Google's, Facebook's, with all their huge infrastructure, HR departments, for some reason layoffs is such a thing which could be done better in terms of their management and their stuff. But okay. I just cited one more thing. Suggested book, Manager's Path by Camille Fournier. It's a 1-point book if all you may want to read. It's on Amazon. But if you have more questions, you can, here's my contact information, email or LinkedIn. If you have any questions to ask.